The top 1% brand founders are not smarter than you. They just think differently and they just do things slightly different in a slightly different way. And this is what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to share what's the difference and how you can apply the 1% brand owner mindset so that you can grow your brand into the 1%. Here, just a little bit of context. This is only part of the portfolio of brands that I'm mentoring, also my own brands. And as you can see, like last 90 days, let's refresh this. Those are just a couple of brands that use Triple Whale. Not all of them use Triple Whale. But yeah, anyways, just want to show you here that this is real and I have data that this is based on. So while this is loading, exactly, there you go, there you can see it, bam, bam. So we spent some money, cool, yeah, and we get some returns, but this is not the point of the video. The point of the video is that there's a difference between brands that are crushing it and finally founders that are crushing it and founders that are stuck, okay? So what's the difference? I'll start with a stuck founder because that might be more relevant to you. If you're already crushing it, I mean, nice, watch the video, but I think most importantly, it's really for brand owners that feel stuck at least. And the one thing that I would say is I divide it into mindset and paid ads more specifically because that's what I focus on initially with brands to really get them up to speed and scale them from like 40K to $1 million a month, from 10K to 300, 400K a month, or from 100K to 500, 600K a month. But before we even start talking about paid ads, it's really about the mindset. What does that mean? What does that mean? What I see with founders that are stuck, especially in the beginning, is that they are just perfectionists, right? They want to wait until they have the perfect ad that is 100% on brand, right? That like all the colors are perfect, the pixels are perfect, you know, down to the pixel, this detailed. And this is just, in a way, just overthinking stuff. And it's just making you very, very slow. And especially initially when things are not working, that's not the right mindset to get you to something that is working as fast as possible, right? So they're overthinking stuff. They're thinking, oh, well, I don't know, it doesn't really fit our brand, right? Every time I hear that, like, and this might sound super harsh, but I'm honest with you. I'm always honest with you guys. Do you really have a brand? Do you really have a brand when you're struggling to acquire customers profitably through paid ads? And the answer might be no, right? And yes, I know there's this vision of having this huge brand, you know, that everybody knows and everybody wants to purchase or wants to purchase the products. But you have to get to that spot. And I talked about this like a couple of videos back where I basically mentioned, don't compare yourself to Chanel now when they're in business for 100 years. Compare yourself to Chanel when they started out, when she, you know, did her little boutique and basically nobody knew her. What did she do, right? And that's how you have to think like. So this over-analyzing, over-perfectionism, that's one thing that I see. This really blocks you, okay? Now, what does let's say the scaling founder do? What does he do differently? He has a high tolerance for risk and speed, right? So he knows, he understands, or she understands that testing fast and failing fast is really what you need to do in the beginning. You need to be scrappy. You cannot be too attached to, this doesn't really fit our brand, because honestly, you're just discovering what really your brand is and who has like a natural match with your brand, okay? So really testing fast, not being too attached to one thing or another. And they don't wait until anything is like perfect. They just want to go, right? And that's the right mindset that you need in order to find something fast that works reliably, okay? Another one, ego is in the way, okay? So again, I touched on this earlier. It's really about this aesthetics, right? And it has to fit the brand and stuff. I understand to some extent, but at the other hand, like that's my profession. That's what I do. I have to put on my performance marketing hat, and I look at the number and I look at what actually converts, what gets people through the door, right? That's what we should be doing. And then you can always figure out a more on-brand version and just test it against what's working. But if it's not working as well as the ugly ad, quote unquote, but the ugly ad enables me to, instead of like having 1K in sales per day, get to 10K, 20K in sales per day, like change the life of many other people, hire people, change their lives, then ultimately change my life, potentially exit the brand. Like that's what I'm looking at. And that's what I'm risking if I only focus on this aesthetic part. And trust me, there are so many beautifully looking brands that look amazing from the outside, but they're not making money. They're losing money, right? And eventually they just die, right? And everybody's like, oh, why? But they look so great. They didn't sell. So focus on the stuff that actually works and converts. Then, what do scaling founders do? They are data-driven, okay? They're not emotionally attached. Even if this maybe doesn't, match what I had in mind or had envisioned for my brand, if this is what's working, let's figure out a way to scale that, right? So it's not this, I don't know, I don't like how this ad looks, but it's, okay, let's test it. Let's see how it goes. If it works, then let's double down on it. Let's optimize it. Let's improve it, and so on and so forth, right? The same thing with audience. I see a couple of brands that are just so like focused and zeroed in, like, no, we know this is our customer, this is our target audience. Those are the ones that usually struggle. It just takes longer because you have to get rid of that like mental block. Because it might be that your product, you envision it for one target audience, but then you figure out by testing and iterating that it's actually a completely different audience that likes your product. Then you should double down on that if you want to make money, if you want your business to be profitable. If not, then it's just an ego show, honestly. Now, another thing, they have short-term thinking, okay? So if something is not working for a couple of days, they start to panic, okay? And they cut spend, just like out of like emotionally, oh, no, I cannot spend that money. And basically they don't trust the process and they don't trust the system that I teach, for example. And that's then a problem, right? Because you might be cutting something that just needs a little bit of time. I'm not an advocate of like, just let things run, for weeks and blah, if you don't see results. No. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to, be able to invest money, and also you have to have that mindset to like spend money in order to get learnings. That's what we get in the first place. And then use these learnings to create better assets and then spend more profitably. So it's crazy, but it's always like that. Like you might have this initial phase where you basically don't see the money coming back in the way you want to, but then like it overcompensates as soon as you hit the right angle, as soon as you hit the right creative type, the right funnel, blah, blah, blah. Like it compensates. Within a week, you make what you made in like 2 months. Okay, I see this all the time, but you have to have, the patience to stick with it. So exactly, they're investors in scale and not penny pinchers, right? They see this really as an investment, not as a cost. They're not afraid to spend money. And yes, to make 300K, you might be having to spend 100K or 150K, right? So you cannot get to $1 million a month if you're just like spending 100K a month. It's just not realistic, okay? Then they also blame external factors and agencies, right? Especially. So Yes, I mean, there's a lot to blame with agencies, by the way, but that's another point. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, but this is always like, it's always something else, right? It's always like, yeah, Facebook doesn't work for me, and the algorithm has changed, whatever, CPMs are too high, the CPCs are too high, blah, blah, blah. But there are so many things that we can control so that we put ourselves into a position where we have a good chance of making it work. And we should do all of these things, right? And that's exactly what I teach all the brand founders, right? Is literally like the variables that we can control. That's what we have to just meticulously test and iterate, and until we find something that is working, right? Obviously, there's a system behind that. There's a strategy. Some of my other videos, if not, check them out. What do the scaling founders do? They are obsessed with growth loops and not just hacks. They're not the ones asking for, okay, what's the magic button in the ad account? Because there is no magic button in the ad account. I tell it all the time, right? I tell you this in every single video. There is no magic button. There are a couple of principles, though, that you can follow to then eventually see results if you just keep on pushing and if you just keep on following this process, right? So they are looking for systems, right? They're not looking for one-off tactics, because for every success, behind every long-lasting success, there is a system, there is a process, right? There's no such thing as just throwing up one ad and the first ad is just taking you to the moon. No, that's not how it works, right? You have to think of building a system, and that's what I help brand founders with. What I also had experience in my brands is really building the right systems, putting the right people in place to run these systems, right? So that you as a founder can oversee the structure and think strategically and never, like, always keep the vision in sight. Okay, so that's like those are the main differences when it comes to mindset. Now let's look at the paid ads specifically. So stock founders, they are in most of the cases disengaged from marketing, right? And to some extent, I can understand that, because a lot of founders, they come, especially with great products, they come from the product side, right? They come from like building the product and like putting their like blood, sweat, and tears into the product, which is great, right? This is so important, because you can have the best marketing in the world. If your product is shit, you will eventually, lose. But once the product part is done, right, and you kind of like validated that the market wants the product, right, so that there's like there's demand for your product, then it's all about marketing. Trust me. Like, it's all about getting a system, a predictable system in place that acquires you new customers like clockwork, whatever you're doing, right? If you're sleeping or I don't know, you're taking a walk or whatever. So this is the core part. Like, the founder has to do that shift. The founder has to commit to saying, I own this process. I own this process, and I commit to doing the marketing for my products, because nobody else can do the marketing for your product the way you do the marketing for your product. That's what I always say. That's why it doesn't work to outsource the stuff to an agency or a freelancer, because quite frankly, they don't care. They don't care. You're just one of 20, 30, 50 clients. If it doesn't work, well, whatever, right? We have three new ones that come into the door. So, and also they're not incentivized to really think from your perspective. So there's no other option than really owning it, okay? So they're just outsourcing this. They don't really like support with the messaging stuff. And they're not really getting deep into this. And then they wonder why it's not working, okay? So scaling founders, what they do is they own the acquisition 100%. 100,000%. 1,000%, right? They don't just delegate and disappear, but they really try to understand what's the strategy behind that. What is the messaging? What are the potential messagings, the potential angles? What is then the angle that works best for us, right? What are the KPIs that I should be looking at as a founder every single week, right? What's the difference between new customer return on ad spend and return on ad spend? What's the difference between new customer CPA and CPA, blended CPA? Like understanding metrics, looking at them, making decisions based off of them. This comes with ownership, right? And trust me, the ones that are crushing it, and I know a couple of them, a bunch of them that I help scale, they really own this, right? They're on top of this. They understand that this is the most important growth mechanism for my brand, for my business, okay? So then the next thing, low creative output, right? So stuck founders, they just take too long. They just take too long when it comes to creative. And that might also be an issue with, this perfection thing, the ego thing. This all plays into that. You have to have a certain creative output, right? And this also depends on the spend level that you're at and also in the situation that you're at, right? So if nothing is working, you have to test like crazy until you find something that is working quickly, right? And those phases, they come, right? They come and go. That's just part of the game. That's why it's so important to have systems and to think in systems so that you can just predictably put out highly converting ad creatives, funnels, and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, this is a huge issue, right? So if you expect to just shoot one ad, every 2 weeks or one time a month, doesn't work, right? And then it's not a fault of Meta or the platform. You're just not testing enough, right? That's just the cold hard truth. So what do scaling founders do? They have a certain creative volume, creative velocity, okay? So they're constantly testing new hooks, angles, creative formats, funnels, right? I could add here funnels, and they might be launching 20 plus ad creatives per week, right? So one thing that I say in multiple videos is the bare minimum is 3 net new creative concepts per week with 3 hooks or 3 iterations each. That's already 9, right? And then you iterate on the main winners, on the best creative, and you just iterate on it, right? You just do different versions, different hooks and stuff like that. This brings you up to 20 easily, right? But that's what it needs, right? So next thing, weak or unclear offer. Now, that's another thing. Like we're getting in front of cold people, essentially, especially when our goal is to scale to 8 figures, right? We have to go in front of cold audiences. So we have to have a front-end offer, a package that is attractive enough to penetrate cold audiences. Because if we say, no, we don't want to give discounts, right? You can choose that, but then you have to accept that it's going to be extremely hard to make it work. And I'm not talking about like discounting single products. This is not what we do here, right? And that's not what I want you to do. What I want you to do is to have an offer that has a high AOV, okay, high average order value, and we're talking like, I think everything around $100 usually is good. It might be higher in some cases. So let's say around 100 and 150, okay? But still have a great deal. How do you do that? You basically have a value of this whole bundle that exceeds this price, which might be 200, right? 200, for example, $200, okay? So the value of your bundle, the value of your product offer is higher than the actual price that people pay. Okay, just to simplify that. Okay, then what do they do? Yes, of course, clear offer, irresistible landing experience, landing page experience, irresistible offer, right? That really makes it easy for them and low risk to try it out, right? While having a high AOV. So you're not just acquiring like some cheap, customers that only are there to, to get products basically for free, okay? Then the last one, they're fearful of spending money, right? And this is a problem because if your goal is to crack paid acquisition, you cannot expect to say, well, once I hit like a 9 return on ad spend, that's where I can start scaling. Or what I hear a lot is like, once it's working, I have unlimited budget. No, this is not how it works. This is not how it works. Trust me. You need to be able and you need to be willing to invest into learnings, number one, right? So this is what I always teach is really the first thing is we have to have clarity on what is the angle, what is the front end offer, what's the funnel, before we can really have like a setup that, is able to basically sustain higher spend levels, okay? We have to pay our way to that point in a way. So this is just part of it. Exactly. And then what do scaling founders also do, which is something that I love to talk about, is really understanding the lifetime value, the customer acquisition cost, and the lifetime profit ratio to really nail down, and this is the central question, how much can I afford to pay for a new customer? And basically, constantly work on increasing that number. Because the more you can afford to pay for a new customer, to spend on a new customer, the easier it will be, and the more you will bully your whole competition, right? That's all it is, finally. All right, I hope that was helpful. If you say, well, I feel a little bit stuck, I already got some ideas on how to how to fix that, and I gave you them, all of them here, most of them. But if you feel like I need some more guidance, I need someone just to like basically watch me do all of this stuff, give me the system that I can just plug in and basically own this whole thing and become one of these founders that are scaling. That's what I do in my mentorship, where I help brand owners to scale to 8 figures without agency, everything in-house. And basically also we talk a lot about mindset, we talk a lot about teams, systems, besides obviously the whole strategy. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just click the link below, first link in the description, leave comments, ask questions, looking forward to talk to you soon, potentially. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next one. Take care.